Well, good morning, Mike. Good to see you. So appreciate your willingness to have this conversation with me today. I always enjoy visiting with you about this work because it's such a passion of yours, and it always comes across. It's so evident. But before we start our conversation, if you wouldn't mind just letting our listeners learn a little bit more about where you're located and kind of your tenure there in the district, just a little bit about Mayfield Schools.
Sure, absolutely. First off, I'd like to just comment on how excited I am to be talking with you. I always enjoy my SOAR Ed Leader 21 Battelle for Kids family because it's we're all trying to do the same work, and so that's always warms my heart. In addition to just the relationships that go beyond teaching and learning, et cetera. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm the proud superintendent of the Mayfield City Schools. Mayfield is a suburb of Cleveland, southeast suburb of Cleveland. We have about 4,100 students. Interestingly, we've had the same amount of students since 1980, literally. We haven't gone up, we haven't gone down. A redistribution of students, yes, but the number has remained the same. We're made up of 4 communities, all different, very supportive of their schools. I've been here. This is my second year as superintendent. Prior to this, I had served as assistant superintendent for 6 years. And then also I taught here, was athletic director, director of HR. So all in all, this is my 23rd year in Mayfield. And it's the wonderful thing about that tenure is the parents of our students now were former students of mine and players that I've coached. So it's a lot of fun to see the familiar names when I walk through schools today. But yeah, great district, fantastic board. We are in a good place. I feel really, really blessed to serve this community.
Well, and one more thing that's unique about you, Mike, is you have deep roots in that community, but you actually we had the pleasure of watching you also implement this kind of visionary work in another district as a superintendent in Lakewood. So it's been fun to watch you make such an impact on that district, and they're continuing the work and flying, soaring into it. And then you come back and you've led it back in your district. So it's a very unique situation, but we've had the opportunity to watch you in 2 different districts, and that's a lot of fun.
Yes.
But my first question for you is, and certainly from Mayfield perspective and also Lakewood, you've prioritized the portrait of graduate work as a systems leader. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about why it's been a priority for your leadership, this work that you've been so deeply engaged in for a number of years.
Well, I think first and foremost, it really resonates with me, this work. As you've heard me say many times, and I'll be very brief, I was introduced to a concept around 2011-12 as I was participating in a national security seminar in the Army War College. And the concept is VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it was the Army in the military was talking about the world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, and how the military needed to adjust and adapt to be responsive in times of need to a world that was totally different from the old Cold War stages. And I began to think, how did this impact education? If our students are going to be inheriting a VUCA world, are we truly preparing them? And then the answer to that, I answered my own question was no, but I didn't know what to do with that information until I was blessed to attend an Ed Leader conference in 2016, and it totally changed who I am as an educator and what I believe in. And still to this day, I just believe that this work around the portrait is absolutely necessary as our students learn to navigate in a complex and ever-changing world. The other beauty of the work is that it is a rallying point for communities. I think the opportunity for a shared vision to be built serves as an anchor for school communities. As you mentioned, I've been able to witness this work in 2 different communities, which is a testament of the importance of it and equipping students with skills and mindsets beyond just content so that they can successfully navigate in a world that's changing every day. And we can't even predict what tomorrow, let alone 5 years, will bring forth. But our students will be prepared for whatever, because we're giving them a diverse set of skills and mindsets so that they can successfully navigate.
So you referred to kind of this vision that's collectively identified and kind of shaped by the broader community and your portrait of a graduate. So talk a little bit about your portrait in Mayfield and why you think that's such a critical visioning exercise and really the North Star for your district.
Sure. Well, the disruption of COVID, as I was transitioning back to Mayfield, early on when I was doing my assessment as a part of my 100-day transition, I began to ask our staff and other stakeholders about a portrait, because I was a part of the work before I left back in 16 to 18. And it really had gone a little dormant for obvious reasons. People were just holding on, trying to keep the doors open and take care of kids. But when we re-engaged with our stakeholders around the portrait, I would say the old portrait, because it's evolved in just a year and a half since I've been back, we asked the question, is this still relevant? Does this still resonate with you? And the consensus was, yes, some of it, but it was strongly urged and encouraged that it evolve. And it has, to include personalization, scholarship, and curiosity. In fact, when we were meeting with our teacher group, our instructional leadership team of about 45 teachers in our district, pre-K to 12, one of our teachers stood up with great passion and enthusiasm and said, "I'm so glad that we're revisiting this, because the world has changed in the last 2 years because of the pandemic. And to not do so would have been malpractice on our part." And I quote him. He's a fantastic educator, but that really resonated with me. So in addition to the 4 C's, our portrait has evolved to include personalization, scholarship, and curiosity beyond just competencies. Our portrait has evolved to be also what we value and also what we believe, in addition to mindsets and skills. It's really driven the work now. What has blossomed from our portrait work and our belief in it as an anchor and a North Star here in Mayfield is we've developed a philosophy of learning around personalization. And that philosophy has now impacted the way we instruct, the way we design, the way we organize our learning spaces, the way we offer and create courses, our school day and its structure, as well as pathways. So as you can see, born from our portrait is really an institutional alignment and transformation that has got people absolutely on fire here in Mayfield.
Well, we're going to talk more about that, because I had the great pleasure of visiting and walking through the schools and talking with students and talking with teachers about the work that you've led and it's, your entire community is engaged in there. It's really something to behold. It really is. But I want to first ask you, you talked about personalization, scholarship, curiosity, and the other competencies that you have in your portrait. If I were a parent today, and certainly for my grandchildren, that's what I would want for my children, right? My grandchildren. But what parents in your community say about this work? What do you hear from parents? And then I want you to talk about your board a little bit too.
Sure. Well, in September of 2022, we conducted with a researcher a community satisfaction survey. And he quoted that it was some of the best survey data that they had received in terms of support of the schools. When we ask our parents what kind of educational experience do they want for their children, inevitably test scores do not come up. What they want is their students to be well-rounded, to be able to effectively communicate both written and spoken, and to be able to vet information for accuracy in this on-demand world that they live in. They also want their students to be able to, collaborate and work through problems in a civil manner. So seeing this as a crucial element of the educational experience, for their children. Our parents really, really believe in this work. What we had to also do is to make sure that we were concise in the way in which we explained the importance of this work, this visionary work, that we are equipping students with a toolkit, if you will, by which they can access whenever necessary in order to wrestle with content. So we're not excusing the content. We're not dismissing the content. What we're doing is giving students skills and mindsets and abilities to successfully work through the content for deeper understanding. And this has been very, very well received by our community. I think we are doing a really good job of communicating clearly why this is important. And, we don't just talk about it. This is the work that we do, and it's posted everywhere. With respect to our Board of Education, they too believe in this work as well. We have 2 of our board members that have been on the board for 24 years. The other 3 have served 2 consecutive terms as well. And they are just as bought in as our other stakeholder groups.
It's really wonderful to hear. And I when I had the opportunity to visit with a lot of your students, I mean, if those were my children, I'd be so impressed and thrilled because the agency that they demonstrated was just really impressive. So I want you to talk a little bit about, before we get into some of the big moves that you made, how did this kind of start evolving in your district? I mean, did you have to spend a lot of time building capacity? I mean, kind of what do you think? Because you've made some just incredible changes in your district. I mean, it's fundamentally changed everything that's going on in your district, in my view. So how did you set the stage for that to emerge?
Great question. We started with the portrait, and we began asking our staff and our other stakeholders if we're going to realize this for our students, this portrait, by the way, which brings mere words on paper as a part of a vision to life. Mm-hmm. How do we go about making this reality? And we first started with the student experience and coming together on a philosophy of learning that we can all agree upon. And our mission is every student, every day. And so that's a part of the fabric here. It's in the DNA of every Mayfield person, regardless of which of the 4 communities you reside. And when we asked ourselves, how do we live up to our mission through our portrait? We started with coming up with a philosophy that we could all agree upon, and that's personalization. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to personalize the experience for each and every student every day, then how do we change our structures? How do we change our lesson design and the way we instruct? And how do we change the way in which we offer courses and pathways pre-K to 12 for all of our students? The other thing is, and how do we transform our learning spaces to complement the work that we're trying to accomplish? On our community satisfaction survey, we asked how many people were aware that we were considering some construction renovations in several of our buildings. 80% of the respondents said they weren't aware that we were considering it. But when asked if they would support it, they said 79% said yes. So when we reflected on that and we've talked to our superintendent parent advisory group, we go, well, why the overwhelming support? And they said, because we can see the connection between what the district is doing, even with the physical plant, in their efforts to try to realize the portrait for every single student. So I thought that was just a tremendous compliment to the work that we're doing here and the confidence that our community has in this work as well.
So let's get into some of the big moves that have occurred in your district. And I know that I saw it system wide. So you may want to start at the elementary or high school, wherever you want to start. But I'd really like to have you describe which I have the great fortune of having, you heard me say this before, Mike, I've gone to a lot of school visits, even in other countries. I've had the great great privilege of visiting schools and seeing great work underway. And I've never seen anything as powerful as what I observed in your school district. But I'm finding sometimes I have a hard time describing that what I saw with my own eyes, and it wasn't just show. I mean, it was in action, and kids were living it and talking about it and the way that teachers talked about it. So describe for our listeners kind of the big moves and the big changes that have occurred, and then we'll talk about its impact here in just a little bit.
Sure. One of the things that we observed is over a 6-year span, when we were looking at career technical education, we noticed that achievement gaps were totally eradicated. And so we put a study team together internally to ask the question, what was going on in career tech education that would enable these kinds of results, if you will. And what we came to consensus that in career technical education, students had high agency and high engagement. And if you have high agency and high engagement, we knew that that would impact achievement because we had 6 years of data that was telling us so. So we began to ask ourselves the question, how do we replicate that in the general education experience for our students? And we knew that our philosophy was anchored in personalization. Mm-hmm. So we created a framework around personalization that includes agency, engagement, opportunities, and outcomes. Because we want to make sure that we know if we're going to make changes that is moving the needle for students. So in doing so, we've taken it to heart to create agency for our students, to give them voice and choice over their own learning. Not only do they appreciate it, but they expect to be at the table and have an opportunity to advocate for themselves. In addition to that, we studied some information from graduates that indicated that they wish they'd had more ownership of their learning, especially those who had transitioned into higher ed where they had more time on their hands. So we put a team of teachers together and administrators, and we began to study what can we do differently at Mayfield High School that would demonstrate agency and engagement, because we knew that it would lead to higher achievement. So we begin to look at the structure by which we allow our students to engage in the work and also the time. See, we can control the time. 7:30 to 3, we can turn the structure that meet in a manner that meets our expectations and our desires. And if we were chasing agency, how do we do that? Incredibly enough, we created what we call 3 learning modalities at Mayfield High School. Again, with the emphasis on giving students agency and control over their own learning. When students reflect on how they learn best, they can then, with their parents and their guidance counselor, choose one of 3 learning modalities. Learning modality number 1, they can choose a traditional 8-period day where every 50 minutes they move from one class to the next. What does that do for students? Those students that need more structure, that like routine, and they know that about themselves as a way in which they learn best, they can choose the traditional modality. When I reflect on my own children, my youngest daughter needs structure. My oldest daughter needs less structure and enjoys more agency. She thrives with that kind of configuration. So modality number 1 is a traditional 8-period day. Modality number 2 is a self-paced experience, which is a combination of traditional and some self-paced classes. A student, for example, may choose to take math self-paced. They attend math class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. On Tuesday and Thursdays during that period, they can go to one of our supervised learning spaces in the high school and work on anything that they want, including that math course. The other unintended benefit of this is that we discovered that this also allowed for very successful intervention. Because in the traditional 8-period course, if the kid is free 5th period, but the math teacher is teaching, the kid has to wait for after school to have access or before school. And we know how complicated everyone's life and schedules are these days. So the unintended benefit of the learning modality number 2, self-paced, is kids can access the teacher for one-on-one instruction, small group instruction to get clarification over concepts. Learning modality number 3 is the fully customized learning plan, where a kid goes to a large supervised area where they have 4 content teachers, math, social studies, science, and English, in addition to an intervention specialist and a capstone teacher. And they take the curriculum and set daily goals and plans for themselves, so long as they're maintaining at least a 70% in that particular discipline. It is incredibly popular. And we sought volunteer teachers who wanted to jump into this. These early adopters, they jumped in right away. And it has really, really created a unique configuration at our high school. So much so that we begin to push it down to our elementary school as well as the middle school, because our parents and our families want the kind of agency that we are providing for our students at the high school. So it's really been transformational.
I mean, your students, it was impressive. I visited with a group of 4 high school students in your options area. And all 4 of them were working on a different course. But the students just talked, and one student said, I said, what do you all think about this? And one student said, I love it. And the other said, we do too. I love it. And I said, why? Why do you love it? And he said, well, because it treats me like I have a say over my day, and I can control my schedule and I can control my responsibilities. And then he said, and I feel like this is going to prepare me really well for college, because I'm going to have a lot of freedom and a lot of responsibility to take care of my own learning in college. And I think this helps prepare me for that. So I thought the kids' reactions to it were just incredible.
I agree. The feedback is really, really good. We're seeing increases in student achievement. And the other thing that it's really helped with the option, which is modality 3, is we used to have in many instances students that had conflicts in their schedule and they couldn't participate in band, or they couldn't take this AP course. That is no longer the case when you're in the option. You can come out of the option, enter in a specialized course or program that you're interested in, and then go back to the option to work on your daily plans as well. And it's created the flexibility for students not to be limited, meaning access to courses by their school day. And so students really, really like the flexibility of having access to the broader curriculum versus being limited.
I had a student, and by the way, the entire group that we took to visit your school district, everyone walked away and said, wow, these kids are empowered and self-reflective. They really knew themselves, their strengths and their areas they have to really work on as learners. That's not always evidenced when you're visiting with high school kids, but these kids knew. I have one student who described just exactly what you did. He said, I'm in the self-paced because I feel like I can really run with these other courses, but there's one course that I felt was not my strongest area. So I'm coming out of the options and I'm going back to because it's my choice, I'm going back to the regular class for whatever course that was he was talking about. And I thought, man, that's empowering kids to make decisions, about their own learning.
Amen. When I reflect on my own journey as a learner, and I mean this with all honesty, I didn't think about how I thought or reflect on how I learned to probably my junior year in college. And so what we are doing here, which I think is fantastic work, is as early as we can, we're challenging our students to reflect on how they think and how they learn. And the reason why that's important is because it empowers them to take ownership over their own learning. As you mentioned the example here, one student comes out maybe for math because they know they need that structure and that one-on-one contact daily with the teacher. That's because they reflected on what they need as a learner. And the schedule configuration is supportive of that and allows them to choose the way in which they learn best. Even a combination of the option and the traditional class of 5 days a week.
So some people might, listening to this, that might think, wow, that seems a little chaotic. And how do you keep track of kids? And I will tell you, I visited with one of your teachers in the option, a couple of them actually, but one of them particularly I want to talk about. And they were all incredible. All of your teachers were just so amazing. This one English teacher I visited with, I said, how do you keep tabs, on where kids are and which kids need help? And she said, oh, it's easy. It's easy for me to do. In fact, she said, under the options, you mentioned earlier, it's easier to do kind of support for kids, acceleration where kids need some little additional support. She talked about how she does these mini lessons every day, and she tracks where kids are on their work, and she'll identify, these 5 kids need a mini lesson in this. And so they're able to do that and respond to the unique needs of kids in ways that we've never been able to do under traditional structure. So it seemed like your team and the educators that were a part of this were also thriving in the environment. And the teachers also said, gosh, we love it. We just feel like we know our kids better. We feel like we have more agency also as educators. So I want you to just comment on your experience in observing your educators in this environment at the high school.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and thank you for bringing it up. We've seen and witnessed increases in staff engagement as well. And because they have the same opportunities to, choose the traditional way of teaching, if they so like that, or be a part of the option. What drives the number of sections in the traditional departments are the number of students that are choosing self-paced or self-option. And it's important to mention we didn't add any more staff to be able to do this. And those who want a change, I've been doing this for 20 years every day. Now I can transition into the option and do something different. We see the engagement of the staff increase. Or I can self-pace and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm working with small groups of kids or one-on-one with students. And that is incredibly engaging for our staff as well. The feedback from our staff has been very, very, very good. And certainly they appreciate the innovation that in the journey that the district is willing to go on to meet the needs of kids. And because the staff is right there with them, supporting them the whole time.